Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. There's been a whole lot of talk in the white media about who is Biden going to pick to replace outgoing Supreme Court Injustice Stephen Breyer. Now, Biden's been saying for the longest time that one of his goals would be to put a black woman on the Supreme Court, which would be a first. Well, we need to be asking all kinds of questions about who it is that Biden would want to put on the Supreme Court bench because last time we had some folks who put a black person on the bench, it was Clarence Thomas, and I think we all know how that one worked out. Now, there's been about half a dozen or so names that have been bandied about in the white media quite prominently, and I think we need to take a look at least a few of them, because it's not for nothing that the white media is kicking out these names in particular. The first is Ketanji Brown Jackson. She's here because she's a federal judge. You'll remember when Trump tried to claim executive privilege as a reason why his staffers could not testify against him. Ketanji Brown was the one who issued the ruling saying presidents are not kings. So that's the reason why she's getting top billing these days, because she gave a soundbite that the white media found to be quite replayable. As far as the white media is concerned, there's a lot of reasons why Ketanji Brown would be a good pick for the Supreme Court. There's a lot of white leftist groups who would very much like to see her on the bench. Not surprisingly, not a single one of these groups lists anything that she's done for black people. Instead, they brag about her standing up for the disabled. She stands for workers' rights. That means she sides with the white-run, overwhelmingly white-dominated labor unions. And on top of that, immigrants. They make a big deal of her rulings regarding immigrants. You know that train is never late. She has a record of siding with illegal aliens and asylum seekers. In 2019, she issued an injunction to stop the Trump administration from expediting the removal of illegal aliens if they couldn't prove they've been in the U.S. continuously for 2 years or more. Now, that's a hideously low bar for anyone to get over, but Ketanji Brown felt that that was still too much of a burden for the illegal aliens. What do you mean that they have to prove they've been here continuously for 2 years? As soon as they set their foot across the border, that should be good enough right there. That's what she had a problem with. Trump wasn't saying remove them if they're here illegally. He said, well, they should be removed if they can't prove that they were here at least 2 years continuously. And she had a problem with that. Now, the white interests also say that she sides with so-called reproductive health. That means abortion. Environmental protections and separations of powers issues. Nowhere on this list does it mention anything punishing the police, making sure that black people are protected from police brutality or malicious prosecution, and absolutely nothing about anything tangible for us. So white liberals want Ketanji Jackson on the bench because she's going to be an advocate for what they want. Immigrants, white feminists, white environmentalists, white unionists, basically all the white left's pet projects. Oh, and did I mention that she happens to have a white husband? Well, I only mention it because apparently neither Biden nor she nor the white media seems to think that that's a very important point at all. So since apparently they like people to think that she's probably happily single or what have you, I just think at the very least we ought to go ahead and make sure people are aware, hey, she's happily married. And don't these two make a very nice couple? No wonder that she comes so highly recommended by the white media and white interests. Next, you have Leandra Kruger. Her mother is Jamaican, and her father is a Jewish white man, so she's Jewish-Jamaican. She's considered a centrist, quote-unquote, which in the U.S. means she's a moderate racist. Among her numerous rulings in 2018, she ruled to uphold a law that allowed police to take DNA samples from people before they had even had charges filed against them. In 2019, Judge Kruger overturned the death penalty for a white supremacist who literally had Nazi tattoos from head to toe. And just to give you some idea of what an upstanding citizen Kruger was taking the side of, Jeffrey Scott Young committed a double murder, shooting 2 people to death, firing on a third person, and then stealing a car to get away. He was found 3 years later and convicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and carjacking. Since the guy had all these obvious head-to-toe Nazi tattoos, the prosecutors put witnesses on the stand to talk about Young's obvious racism. Kruger complained that the DA had no right to tell the jury that they could consider giving this white supremacist killer the death penalty based on his white supremacist beliefs or not. The prosecutor made an issue of the killer's racism and the jury agreed. By the way, there were white people on that jury. You would think that if anyone should be particularly sensitive to some white supremacist running around with Nazi tattoos, it would be somebody whose father was Jewish, at the very least if her mother is supposed to be a black woman from Jamaica, and yet Judge Kruger went out of her way to go ahead and take the white supremacist side. The fact that this scumbag committed murder in the process of a felony is enough for him to get the death penalty. Well, if he was black, it would certainly be no question of that. But Leandra Kruger disagreed. In fact, she seems to have a soft spot for white defendants accused of heinous crimes. She voted to overturn the death penalty for Scott Peterson, claiming that there were errors in jury selection. Now, talk about the ultimate nothing burger. A technicality of a technicality. So Kruger protects white supremacists and gives the police the green light to forcibly take DNA samples from people, usually black, without having to actually charge them with a crime. No wonder she's so highly ranked on Biden's list of judicial picks. By the way, have you seen the picture of Kruger and her husband? Her husband's the red-headed guy standing beside her. So before you ask, yes, she is married to a white man. Now, next, the white media's made some hay about J. Michelle Childs. She's 55 years old, and she was an Obama appointee put on the bench in 2010. But her ticket to ride has been that she's been endorsed by nigga Jim Clyburn himself. Jesus. Do I even have to say anything more about her than that? The fact that Jim Clyburn's her patron, do I need to say anything more to you than that? Apparently, America's favorite sharecropper is campaigning hard for J. Michelle Childs to be on the Supreme Court. I gotta wonder how many fish fries they've attended together. Clyburn failed to get his other handpicked flunky, Jamie Harrison, into the Senate, so now this snaggletooth fossil is desperately trying to prove he's still got some swag on Capitol Hill. He wants to show everybody he's not irrelevant, yet he's still got some clout. This old country Negro actually thinks that when the white media says he's the most powerful black elected official in Washington, that this actually means he's got some power. To say that somebody's the most powerful black elected official is like saying that he's the richest man in the poorhouse. Clyburn's so stupid he can't or doesn't want to see when the white media's mocking him. Anyone who's best buds with Jim Clyburn is certified dirty. I don't need to know anything more about J. Michelle Childs than that. Now, another person whose name has been in contention is Wilma Wright. She was one of the few judges that Obama managed to get on the bench. She's made no rulings of any real significance, which basically means that she's a career bureaucrat. But one thing that we have noticed is she has a white husband and they have a biracial daughter. You see her in the picture here wearing braces. Well, so far, of the 3 top nominees that the white media keeps mentioning, all 3 of them happen to have white spouses. I'm starting to wonder if maybe the white media considers that to be some sort of requisite qualification. Well, moving on, you have Eunice Lee. Haven't found much on her, and what I found puts her in the same category as Wilma Wright, another bureaucrat collecting her government pay and going to the right inside the Beltway parties. She was a law professor before Biden put her on the federal bench 8 months ago, so it would be a miracle if she actually gets the nomination. If you're a black person, you have to be hyper overqualified in order to get something, so in her case, her resume's pretty thin. She hasn't had enough time on the bench to make her a Supreme Court justice. Well, as a black person, she hasn't had enough time. If she was white, all she have to do is pass the bar and that'd be enough. And just for the record, Miss Lee appears to be single. Not sure if she's ever been married before, but she's certainly not married now. Next, we got Candice Jackson-akiwumi. She's married to a Nigerian. She only got put on the federal bench 6 months ago. Before that, she was a public defender. Looking at her and her husband, these two just seem to be your average garden variety social climbers. I wouldn't put her in heavy contention at all. Next, you got Sherilyn Ifill. She's in charge of the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Yep, the exact same NAACP who gives image awards to anti-black racists like Aquafina. And if the name Ifill sounds familiar to you, it should. Sherilyn Ifill was cousin to the late PBS News anchor Gwen Ifill. Fun fact, did you know that both Sherilyn and Gwen are immigrants? They're family members whose fathers came from Barbados. So Sherilyn Ifill's an immigrant. Guess that's why every public statement she gives is all about how we need to stick up for immigrants' rights. She doesn't seem to have much fire at all for going after the police. Definitely nothing about our tangibles, but as far as immigration goes, that's her big deal. To her, that's what really enthuses her. That's what she's excited about. And that's why she's more interested in representing non-black migrants than she is black Americans, because most of us come from slavery in this country, and as an immigrant, Sherilyn Ifill knows her ticket to ride is to comfort the dominant society by reassuring them she won't rock the boat, that she'll use her melanin to push their agenda and to try to derail ours. Is she a serious pick for the Supreme Court? Of course not. But by throwing her name in the mix, the white media wants to set the stage for her to gain some sort of higher office. This is about raising her profile. And I know you're wondering, who is she married to? Do you really have to ask? So, out of the 7 names that at least CNN, and you know this was given to them by the Biden administration, are trying to push as being the front runners for that Supreme Court vacancy, at least 2 of them are immigrants, and 6 of them are either not married to a DAS FBA person or at the very least not married at all. So out of all of them, about J. Michelle Childs is the only one that I can look at and say, well, at the very least, I don't think that she's an immigrant, and I don't believe that her husband is a white person, or at least somebody who can't trace their ancestry back to the killing fields of the American South. But when you got someone like Jim Clyburn endorsing you, hell, she might as well have on a t-shirt that says, "I'll tell Massa where the slaves are hiding." J. Michelle Childs is the kind of person who our ancestors should have left on the plantations. But for the rest of them, that's what you got. You got this collage of immigrants, and you got these intersectionalists and swirlers. This is what's going on. This is who the white media is telling you is going to be representing black people on the Supreme Court. How is this any different than Clarence Thomas? It's a distinction without a difference. This gallery of rogues is who Biden's going to make a Supreme Court pick from. These women who have no common ground with the black grassroots. But that's not going to stop the Roly-Poly Martins and the Joy Reids and the Zerlinas and the Tiffany Cross-Eyes and the Rott and the Griot and the rest of the white media's black bootlicks from celebrating this and breathlessly telling all of us that this is the most momentous thing ever and black people don't need to ever demand anything from Biden. He doesn't have to do anything for us because he gave one black flunky a federal job. You know, it's not hard to game this one out. If and when Biden and the Democrats decide to give Kamala Harris the bootlicks are going to be pretending to speculate on what black woman will be chosen to replace her. But in the end, when some white male gets the job, they're going to point to Biden's black woman on the Supreme Court, and they'll tell everybody that's a fair trade. Well, okay, sure, Kamala Harris, she got given her pink slip, but they put a black woman on the Supreme Court. I can hear Roly-Poly talking about it now. Y'all, young folks, y'all just bunch of dumbass fools. Y'all don't see that Supreme Court justice is on the bench for life. I mean, even Kamala, if Kamala had become president, all she could do is be there for about 8 years. So which y'all got to be realistic about it. Y'all got to play the real game. Y'all got to see how the game really works. Which would you rather have? Somebody on the Supreme Court for life, or just somebody in the White House for 8 years? So for those people who are wondering how this could impact Kamala Harris's political fortunes and future, just understand the bootlicks are going to be putting the silver lining on this particular cloud, no matter which way it goes. Me personally, I could give less than a rip which character from this menagerie of mendacity gets put on the federal bench, because it's not going to do anything for us. And I don't devote enough time and interest to trying to lay the odds on which one of them are going to get chosen, because all of these clowns, they're all cut from the exact same cloth. But that said, just speaking for myself as Professor Black Truth, if I had to lay odds on which one of them I think the smart money's on, given what I've found on them in the last 48 hours, I would say the only viable contenders are Brown, Kruger, and Childs, though not necessarily in that order. Democrat ideologues will want someone on the younger side to be on the bench because they've seen the strategy that the Republicans have been using. Now, were we talking about the Republicans, then Leandra Kruger would get the nomination hands down because she's 45 years old, and the GOP is currently showing everyone their strategy is to front load the Supreme Court with as many young ideologues as they can. That way, they'll be able to force policy on the public for the next 35 to 40 years. Kruger is young, and that's a plus, but her rulings show that she's way right of center. I'm not sure how Democrats in Congress are going to like that. However, Biden seems to want nominees who he thinks the Republicans won't object to. And I think the GOP would be just fine with a judge whose rulings show that she doesn't want white supremacists to be punished. And we got to go light on those neo-Nazis. Oh, and we need to make sure the police can do whatever they want. I can see Biden and even the white media claim that she's some sort of middle-of-the-road centrist, when black people recognize her for exactly what she is. Kruger is on my short list, but I don't necessarily put her at the top. If I was told that I have to make a call right now, right this very moment, on who I think would get the nomination, I would say Ketanji Brown seems to be the strongest contender, at least on paper, if past Democratic Party nomination patterns hold. She's 51 years old, so she's not seen as lacking the life experience that a Leandra Kruger might be perceived as lacking. She's already been on the federal bench for over 8 years, so they know how she's going to rule, and she'd previously issued a ruling that slapped Trump upside the head. So in this era of using laws and nominations to take digs at the other political party, I think there's some Democrats who would see putting her on the Supreme Court as sending the Republicans the kind of gotcha message that they would like to send. Though Biden, who seems to need to check with Republicans before doing anything, he might decide that she wasn't nice enough to the orange man, or he'll say, well, it's hard to say how Sinema and Manchin might go, and it's hard to say, you just don't know. And then there's J. Michelle Childs. She's another Obama-era holdover, been on the bench for over 9 years. She's 55, which makes her closer to 60 than 50. And when it comes to the Supreme Court, that matters. Because if Ruth Bader Ginsburg had lived just 4 more months, Trump and the Republicans would never have been able to ramrod through the nomination of Amy Barrett just 1 month later. Looking back on it, that's how a lot of white liberals look at things. They're looking and going, if only Ruth Bader Ginsburg had dropped out during the Obama years when she should have, instead of deciding she was going to stick around, because this was the best and most important job she was ever going to have in her worthless existence. So don't take it for granted that the age of the person getting on the bench doesn't matter. It does matter, down to the month. Jim Clyburn is pushing Jay Childs heavy, and while Clyburn has no real power, it will be an interesting demonstration of just how much Biden thinks he needs this clown if he decides to make Childs the nominee. So that is one to keep your eye on. Wilhelmina writes about the only other one who I would think would seriously be in contention, though she is 58 years old. And I think that if the Democrats have learned anything from the Republicans front-loading the Supreme Court, it's that age does matter. But that basically would be Professor Truth's 3 bottom picks. I ain't going to call them top anything, with a possible 4th. This is all speculation, and for us it doesn't matter because we didn't choose any of them. There's nobody on this list who we know, anyone who we have any sort of track record, has been standing up for black people or doing anything to impede the march of white supremacy. We didn't put these people in front of Biden. White leftists and bootlicking trash like Jim Clyburn did. As the bootlicks see it, they've transcended blackness. They have their university or government job and their white spouse, so they're all islands unto themselves. What happens to black people has nothing to do with them. They are Negro peons. So no matter which of these nominees wins, black people lose. White media is trying to get black folks happy that Biden's going to make a Supreme Court nomination soon. He's going to be a black woman. Because black people have proven themselves to be like an old hound dog, faithful to the end, no matter how many beatings massa lays on you. Faithful for absolutely no reason. This entire discussion, to the extent that it is one, because I don't think it is, it's irrelevant to us because we didn't recommend any of these people. Now, with the GOP, it's typically the right-wing organization, the Federalist Society. They're the ones who the Republican Party uses to vet whatever extreme right-winger they want to put on the bench. It's usually the Federalist Society who presents the short list to the Republicans about, this is the politically reliable ideologue that you can put on the Supreme Court. As black people, we don't have any organization of our own who recommends judicial nominees who will act in our interest, and even if we did, the Democrats have made it clear they don't listen to us. Their purpose is to get us to sit on our hands and do nothing while white supremacy attacks us and the Democrats pretend like they're going to do something about it. Every time we step to them and told them what it is they have to do for us, they say no. Only time that things have changed or gone our way is when we put pressure on the society itself. So when I hear Biden saying that the Supreme Court's going to have a black woman on the bench, he's not doing that for us. Juneteenth. That's a holiday for federal workers like the U.S. Congress and the president. A black woman as a Supreme Court justice, that would kill two birds with one stone for Biden. First, it would be a way to have a loyal functionary who's going to do Biden and the white left's bidding. And secondly, the Dems can then go to black women and say, look, you black women, what we did for you. We know a lot of you black sorority types have been talking about this. Ski-wee! So we're going to throw you a bone, and now you black women have to vote for us. This is meant to see how much of a crumb they have to throw to black female voters before they begin to come back to the political treadmill. Let me tell you something. Giving one little old black woman a federal job, that's not going to change anything for black people as a group, which is the reason why the Democrats are willing to do it, because it won't actually change anything. Even the empty false proposals Biden's made during the presidential campaign, and which he promptly dumped as soon as he got sworn in, weak as those proposals were, they also proved to be too much for the Dems to do. They didn't want to risk it. That's too much trouble. That's too risky, too dangerous. We can't do that. So that's the context that needs to be set when it comes time to talk about this Supreme Court pick. This is Democrats doing things that only benefit them, and then telling black people, well, we did this for you. You know what this is like? It's like the joke about the selfish husband who buys birthday gifts for his wife, but the gift is actually for himself. For her birthday, the husband will buy her something that he knows full well that she has no interest in and would never use, like a bowling ball or a power saw. And when she predictably says, I don't want it, or she doesn't use it, he'll say, well, if you're not going to use that bowling ball, then I will. If you're not going to use that power tool set, I'll use it. This is what the Democrats are doing. Juneteenth being made a federal holiday wasn't about us. That's why Republicans had no problem supporting it. With all the hysteria about critical race theory and the Republicans in their respective state legislatures that they control trying to ban any mention of slavery, why would they be in favor of putting into the federal registry a holiday, a day off that's entire purpose is to talk about slavery? That ought to let you know something. As Neely Fuller said, white supremacy believes in taking both sides of the conversation. So if anyone who was wondering what's Professor Black Truth's take on all this, now you know. And if you were wondering what kind of individuals they are, you probably already suspected. Well, now you've got confirmation. Don't let any white person on the left or any black bootlick working for them tell you that this is justice for black women. If Biden wants to give justice to black women, then he needs to get justice for the murder of Breonna Taylor. He needs to get justice for the murder of Tatiana Jefferson. It seems on a weekly basis we got some black woman or even black children who are being brutalized by some race soldier with a badge, many of them children held at gunpoint, and Biden ain't doing a doggone thing about it. He's not saying anything about it. That would take courage. That would be meaningful. Putting yet another career or aspiring bootlick on the federal bench who's going to just dutifully carry out whatever the interests of established white power are changes nothing and means nothing. It's not good for black people. In fact, even if you want to separate black women out of the equation, which is what this is meant to do, it's meant to get black women to see themselves as separate from black society as a whole. This doesn't even benefit black women. It will change nothing. So don't let anybody sit here and play this rope-a-dope bamboozle game with you. These clowns are all operating off of a script, and this is the reason why we must make black empowerment a reality in our time. Because if there's one thing that the failure of the black baby boomers in civil rights should have taught us, it's that the goal should not be to have black faces in high places. It is to have black empowerment in high places. And if whoever this judicial or political nominee is hasn't been standing up for black empowerment before they got the office, they're not going to suddenly discover their spine once they finally get the office. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Leroy Lasenberg, Anthony Curry, Justin Marcus, Angel Miner, and Robert Bailey. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.